Hi, my name is Kerry Critchell from RCI Recording Studios, and today we're going to be talking about innovation and creativity. Now, I've put together this chart to hopefully demonstrate the types of innovation that exist, and the two types are vertical innovation or horizontal innovation. And you might call horizontal, another word for horizontal innovation might be intersectional innovation, but both types of innovation are important and fun and full of creativity, and are kind of necessary to sort of the evolution of the human species, so to speak. But the vertical innovation is essentially, as an example here, that we're going to start with a car engine. So someone's created a car engine, and then someone's going to look at that car engine and think, okay, I can make this better. And they make a better car engine. And then someone's going to look at that car engine and think, I can make that better, and they make a better car engine. And so we go from like a 1920s Ford to, a 1960s Mustang to a modern day Mercedes or whatever, right? And each iteration gets better and better and better. The engine will last longer, perform better, be more efficient, whatever you can think of, right? We're improving and improving and improving, and it gets better and better and better. And that's an example of vertical innovation. Horizontal innovation or intersectional innovation is when you take two disparate things, for instance here, peanut butter and jelly, which have nothing to do with each other, but when you put them together, they create something new. And so, like I said, both of these are going to be important, but we're going to think of this in musical terms. We can replace car engine with, for instance, like metal. Now, metal music kind of came around in like the 70s-ish, give or take, and has had, 40 or 50 years to improve and kind of get better and better. And better, I guess, in terms of this would be saying something along the lines of it does the same thing but adds new features that, are compelling. So like a car engine, metal, for instance, you might think of like Ozzy Osbourne or something like that. And if you compare Ozzy Osbourne to modern metal, you might think that sounds pretty tame, or like it just kind of sounds like old school rock or whatever. But at the time, it was a new and innovative kind of thing that they were doing, and somebody else came along and said, well, I like that, and I'm going to do that, but heavier and harder. And like you get to like Metallica, Slayer, and like all the 80s hair metal bands of the 80s, and then you get into like Breaking Benjamin, and like I'm gonna run out of examples because I'm not like a huge metalhead, but modern metal sounds nothing like this 1970s metal. And so what they did was iteratively improve on the genre. They make it heavier and harder, and then it'll go into like little subgenres and things like that. So like you have like hardcore or new metal or like whatever, right? But it's all kind of based off of the original thing. And so it's very creative, and it's a iterative way of improving, and it's a necessary thing, right? Otherwise we wouldn't have bands today, the metal bands of today, if it hadn't been for the iterative improvements on the genre. And when it comes to horizontal innovation, this is when something like truly new comes around. And so like it'd be difficult. Like you can say that modern metal sounds nothing like the original metal, but it's still classified as metal. You can hear the roots, right? Just like a modern car engine probably looks nothing like or operates exactly like the original engine. It's powerful, more powerful, longer lasting, more efficient, etc. Like it has improved over time, but it's still based on the original engine. When it comes to horizontal innovation, you take something maybe like rap or hip hop, and then maybe country, and you put those together, and all of a sudden you have like Morgan Wallen, right? Or you can take like jazz and like funk or something, and get some sort of like a fusion, right? And so the idea is you're taking two disparate things that kind of have nothing in common, and you put them together. Like you can think like also like maybe like folk and metal or something. You put those two together, and you'll have something completely new and different. And so the idea here is you can be very creative with these things, and they're both going to be necessary. So like you might, for instance, you might have an affinity for a certain genre of music, and you think, I love this music and I want to take this and kind of put my own twist on it, right? Or like innovate and improve it and create kind of like your own version of it that becomes its own thing. Maybe a good example of this would be like the Beatles. The Beatles wanted to sound like Elvis, but they failed at sounding like Elvis and instead sounded like the Beatles, right? And so they took what Elvis was doing and they tried to mimic it, but ended up having to put their own, spin and twist on it because they couldn't be Elvis. And so they did the Beatles, and, the rest is history. And then you have like horizontal innovation. And a great example of this might be something like Nirvana, which took like the punk kind of 70s, 80s punk aesthetic and incorporated it with like minimalist pop music and became the grunge that we all know and love. Now, Nirvana was not the first band to do that. Neither Morgan Wallen was not the first person to do country and hip hop. Nirvana was not the first person to do punk and pop, but they put it together and, it ballooned and turned into something new and exciting. And so both of these are important and exciting and great ways to innovate and create new things. But the idea is that you want to either take your vertical innovation and put a twist on something that already exists, or you can take two things that have nothing to do with each other, put them together, and see if they, come up with something new. And so these are just some fun ways to maybe think about how you can go about writing your music or producing your music and putting things together in a way that makes sense to you and is innovative and exciting and, allows you to use your creativity to create the type of music that you want. So anyways, I hope this has been helpful. I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.